Welcome to episode number 20 of the Men and Community Podcast. On our second ever guest episode, Carlo and Matt welcome Carlo's little sister, Deanna, to discuss the challenges, benefits, and lessons behind growing up in an entrepreneurial family. Thank you for being part of our community. Welcome to episode number 20 of the Men and Community Podcast. I am Carlo. This is Matt. And this is a very, very special day for me because this is my little sister, Deanna. And she's come to join us for another guest episode. This will be our second guest episode. Yeah, that's really exciting. Super happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. Making the long trek from the deep southeast of Calgary.
I know, coming into the wilderness of the urban domain.
That's right. There's people around.
Concrete.
Saws blaring in the corner, walking into people's backyards by accident.
Yeah, we won't go there.
It's a rough world out
It's
there.
rough. All right, so we're going to launch straight into our episode with, like we normally do, where we pull some cards. And these cards have questions. So I'll go ahead and I will pull our card. You shuffle them?
You bet I
Did you pre-pick these to embarrass me?
No, there's never pre-picked. They're
shortlisted. But never pre-picked.
In a war between superheroes, who would win?
Just any superhero?
You pick.
Okay. Well, I think we should all answer based on the same superhero dynamic.
Okay, well then you set the dynamic.
Okay. Say Deadpool and Spider-Man. Similar abilities, cunning, and also kind of dumb. So
I wouldn't call Peter Parker dumb.
I mean,
I think
okay.
That's
still
silly.
some naivety.
Yeah,
okay,
versus,
that's
sure.
He's literally a
cynical.
teenager.
Okay.
Deadpool is just silly. He's just a silly guy. That's a hard one because I feel like Spider-Man would be able to get around a lot faster, but Deadpool's deadly. Like he would make the blow.
Sure.
So I'm gonna say the Deadpool would win out of that because he would probably be like, "Oh, hey, Spider-Man, how are you doing?" He'd be like, "Oh, good," and then kill him because he's like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Since
Dark. Dark way to start the episode, Matt.
Yeah, I went a totally different way. I'm picturing just like all the superheroes, kind of like in Civil War, Captain America Civil War, where all the superheroes are just fighting. And so
Battle
the
Royale.
minute that I heard that question in my head, I'm like, oh, who wins if there's an all-out war between superheroes? The aliens, because, you know, we're relying on the superheroes to save us from the aliens that inevitably are coming down. And if the superheroes are fighting, who's saving us from the aliens?
Legitimate answer. Okay. To play by your rules, Spider-Man, because he would just like tie Deadpool up. And yes, Deadpool is skilled and strong and immortal, but also like you tie him up, he's going to stay tied up until he finds a way to chop something off. Okay. To go by your rules, Superman.
All right.
I've always loved the trope that Superman is this like very, a morally strong guy, but he's also so unbelievably strong that nobody else can really hold a candle to him except for another Kryptonian. So I've always thought that was kind of cool.
But that's always assuming that Superman is ethical, and there may very well be a world that Superman is not ethical.
There is nobody that's a Superman fan go nuts. I know this is a dangerous rabbit hole.
That's a whole other. I'm saying in the world that I live, in the crime fighting world that I live in, it's a possibility.
The crime fighting world. Okay.
We're going to get into that
Yeah.
funny world here.
We are. Are we going to pull one more card or are we going to stop?
Let's leave the cards. Something
Okay.
that I want to do with our guests moving forward. And so congratulations, you get to be the guinea pig for our new bit. Because this podcast is about community, there's a few questions that we want to ask throughout the course of the episode. And we're going to hopefully do these questions with multiple guests and just get some different perspectives other than ours. So the first one, we would love to know how you define the word community.
I love how you sent these to me before so I could think on it, but I have to fly by the seat of my pants and answer them.
Do it.
So community to me, I feel has to be multiple people. It has to be like, a group of people with varying skill sets because what one person is strong at, another person might be weak at. And so for me, community is being able to go to a place with a problem and be offered multiple options for the solution or different ways to think about things. So for me, community is very much about, it's good to have self-awareness, but you also need other people that are going to tell you when you're not being very self-aware. So that's community for me. Oh, and then you can do that safely. Like you don't have judgment in that. You know, there's somebody who's honestly looking out for your best interest. So that's community for me, I feel.
A safe place where you can access a variety of skill sets, and then you have the wisdom of a group to help you solve problems in a variety of ways.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Love that. Well, you said it.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. All right. So today's episode is one that I think is going to be really neat. It's going to have some really good conversation behind it. And it's the idea behind growing up entrepreneurial. So to give you guys a little bit of backstory, Deanna and I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. You know, dad, business owner, mom was the kind of mom that, you know, always did some sort of work from home, whether it be nails or babysitting or something along that line. And then when I was 16, they started another business together, which is the business that I ended up moving into doing as well as an adult. And you're a business owner yourself. So tell us a little bit about your business. What is it that you do, Deanna?
Well, number one is I followed in your shoes and I started in the family business right at 18. And I did that for a good 5 years or so until I had to make a decision between businesses because I'm only one person. So now what I do is I've transitioned into running an agency that does specifically legal transcription. People always ask me, well, what's that? And so I explain to people that every single proceeding, deposition, trial, hearing, examination under oath, all of that is on the record. And so I help the people that get the record together. So I just get audio from different courtrooms, lawyers' offices across everywhere. I've gone nationally as far as like Guam. I've done Guam work. And I just type that from the remoteness of my home. So I run an agency with a few people nationwide to get a bunch of pages done for a bunch of amazing court reporters. And yeah, that's what I do.
And the reason you say you live in the crime world is because you get to listen to true crime all day?
I get to listen to the unfiltered versions. When people listen to, true crime shows or true crime podcasts, a lot of that is cut up, taking just the most interesting parts. I listen to the entire thing, start to bottom. I kind of feel like I'm a 13th juror is what I would call it. So there's 12 people normally in a jury. I feel like I'm the 13th one because I get to hear all the evidence, make my own decisions. And, I always walk away from a case feeling if I have an opinion if somebody's guilty or not.
So, do you keep like receipts on your win count? Like how often you pick the same way the jury picks?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that it's probably like 80 or 90% that I would pick the same as the jury. Because you have to remember it's beyond a reasonable doubt.
Sure.
So when you are presented with evidence, so there's a big difference between like a civil trial or a criminal trial.
Right.
I could talk about the differences with that. So typically once you go to trial, it's because people can't agree on something, right? Whether that be on like something that criminally happened or something that happened like in business or whatever. So by the time it gets to trial, both sides have a valid argument. Because if not, one of them would have just been washed out in the process of trying to settle or whatever. So you usually have both sides that are like you understand both sides. You're empathetic with both sides. And then it really comes down to, well, what's the facts? Besides all the he said, she said, like, what is there actually to prove what happened? And then you can just make a decision that feels right about it. That doesn't mean that it's completely justified or completely right or everybody walks away completely happy, but just what's in front of you and what's the most reasonable thing to do with the information that's in front of you.
80 to 90%, eh?
I mean, yeah, because I'm working on a 7-day trial right now. So that's 25 hours of audio that I'm listening to people build cases and speaking. Plus I hear all of the motions, all of the bench conferences, all the opening statements, all the jury selection. So yeah, I get a pretty good feel of like the people involved and the personalities involved, I guess you could say.
Really cool.
Yeah.
So you and I are going to bring the kind of frame of reference for, growing up as kids in this entrepreneurial family together, where Matt, tell us a little bit about your experience in this.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in with a single mom, and I have a really good relationship with my dad, but I've never lived in the same city as him. My dad lives in Vancouver, and he is very entrepreneurial by nature. He has been running a retail consultancy firm that he started probably 20 years ago now, if not a little bit more. And so, I always had entrepreneurial inspiration as well, but in a little bit of a different sense. And so, yeah, I certainly have a similar sort of predisposition to it, but certainly come at it from a different place. And from an only child, so not having the inherent competition that is siblings.
Yeah, and I think competition is a good word, but also a little bit sense of camaraderie there, because like, I remember, do you remember the night that we almost lit the house on fire?
Oh yeah, with the pork chops.
The pork chops.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mom, being the great mother and, businesswoman that she wanted to be, she would pre-make dinner and then like leave instructions, put it in the oven at 350 for an hour. Well, I don't quite know what happened. I think it was because the oven hadn't been cleaned in a while, but it ignited and lit up on fire.
I remember that differently.
Really? What do
Yeah.
you remember?
I remember you not like her asking you to put it in at like 5 o'clock, and it was like 5:45, and she called being like, "I'm on the way," and so you were like, "Shit!" So you cranked. You cranked that heat.
No.
That's how I remember.
No. I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all. Regardless.
It's valid though, because we all know, like, when your mom asks you to take out the chicken from the freezer and you don't take it out, like, that's scary.
There's a
scary
panic.
15 minutes.
There's
But
a
it's
panic.
different though when you don't take the chicken out of the freezer, it doesn't light on fire.
Yeah.
Okay, I legitimately don't remember that, but that sounds like something I would do at that age, so we're gonna give it that. Okay, regardless, it lit on fire, and we had to then put out the pork chops with a fire extinguisher. So
How
Yes.
did it taste?
we didn't eat them.
I was mad we didn't eat them. It was my favorite. I was like, can we still eat them? No.
Okay, so this would be my first question for both of you. Having come from the various different backgrounds of, growing up entrepreneurial, right? Would you say that having that experience in your childhoods and in your home lives was something that benefited you today in your professional life, or was it something that hindered you? And either way, why?
I would say it didn't really impact me at all, because as much as my dad was an entrepreneur in the sense of starting his own business, running his own business, it was never the art of entrepreneurship that was espoused to me as being like, this is something that you should chase. This is something you should do. It was beneficial in the sense of, throughout most of junior high and high school, I wanted to be an architect. And so my dad would introduce me to his architect friends, because that's very much within line of what he does for a living. And so there was the opportunity to connect that way. When I was in high school, and there was opportunity to help him with market research for some of the work and some of the projects he was doing. And he would, for all intents and purposes, give me an allowance to support, some of the market research that I was helping with. And to be completely frank, I probably wasn't doing a damn thing to help, but it was a good opportunity to learn the business and get involved on a deeper level. And I think in some respects there, for a long time, was the desire from my dad for me to learn enough to be interested to step in and learn and eventually take over the business. That's just not how my career transpired. But I don't think that anything that I experienced in terms of my connection to my dad was ever an explicit, like, you should do entrepreneurial things, but rather it was just neat to see, to have a role model who was successful building a business for himself, and to see how that transpired. And surely there's some sort of subconscious bits there in terms of like my desire to build something and to do some business for myself. Although I don't know, I like certainly entrepreneurial, but definitely wouldn't classify myself as an entrepreneur, certainly in comparison to you two.
It's not
Yeah.
competition.
That's no, but that's like my frame of reference for it. So yeah, fair.
Just gonna add to that, but I think for me, I remember earliest memories are entrepreneurial memories. Like, I can think of, when I was 6 and my mom had a little kiosk where she sold jewelry, and we had the credit card machine that you'd like swipe the card and the receipt would print out, and like mom showed me how to make sure the transaction went through and all those things so that like she could run to the bathroom, and if the customer came, like I could deal with it or whatever. And who doesn't like buying from like a 10-year-old, right? Like that's what at the mall. So I don't think that I thought about being an entrepreneur as you're running your own business and providing your own income. I kind of thought about it as a way of you are your service. Like you as a person are the selling feature. So what are you good at? What can you optimize on? So especially like I had a music career that was like my first kind of love. And what are you when you're in a music career? You're selling yourself, right? And so I just learned, what do people like? How can you present yourself in a way that people feel comfortable with you? How can you be approachable? All of those things, right? That come with entrepreneurialism. So, you know, how to meet people and foster a warm relationship so that, you know, maybe that might grow into like a business connection or a possible referral or whatever, right? So I always knew that that was something I wanted to carry on, is like me continuing to be how I made my income was going to be me. I didn't know exactly what way that was going to happen. I didn't know if that was going to be like providing information or providing a service or a product. And that was really the key, is trying to figure out. And I read this statistic that over 65% of people go into the trade that their parents are in, which I thought that was so interesting, because it's like our dad's a mechanic, right? And so he was very adamant about us not becoming a mechanic.
Yes, he was.
So I think if he wasn't like that, it would have been very natural for you, especially because you were into all of that stuff, for you to go into mechanistry. Not that you have a love for it, it's because it's familiar, you're around it. It's easy to get grandfathered in. You can kind of skip some steps when you have somebody that can like show you the ropes, right? So yeah, when I found kind of like my calling, my service that I love to provide, which actually doesn't even have anything to do with me, I'm kind of a fly on the wall, but people like the fact that I'm reliable and punctual and approachable and all these things about my personality that make me a really good business owner. So that's mostly what I learned from our parents, was just that even if you're working a job, you're still selling your services. Mm-hmm. Like you might only be selling your services to one person for one thing at one time, right? Or even when I was like fresh out of high school, I was working, 3 or 4 just different jobs. And my friends would always come to me and be like, because I didn't have any plans to go to post-secondary, be like, what are you going to do? Just work part-time jobs your whole life? And I didn't see it that way. I thought I'm selling my time to different places because I'm trying to figure out what I want to do and I don't want to commit to one place, right? So I thought it was always kind of crazy that they were going to commit to one thing, and many people commit to one thing for 40 hours a week for extended periods of time. And I just never saw the appeal in that. So that's where entrepreneurialism is like, you're offering you're doing so many things in so many days. I do invoicing, and then I write standard operating procedures, and then I do my work, and then I edit work, and then, I do a conference call, come for a podcast. Like I do so many different things that it doesn't feel like one singular job. It's so many jobs.
And I think that's really, really cool. And I think that more people, I hope that everyone that's listening really hears what Deanna just shared about the value of yourself being the main commodity, regardless of what industry you work in, regardless if you think of yourself as a 9-to-5 employee or a contractor or an entrepreneur, like whatever that mindset is, like I hope you have the ability to shift your mindset and see yourself as a commodity. I think that too many people treat their work as something that's fleeting. Mm-hmm. And so you run the risk of damaging relationships, connections, and that ultimately is a disservice to you moving forward for the rest of your career. I work in a sector that's relatively small, but I have colleagues that I met when I was 16 years old that are still active colleagues today. I had no freaking idea when I was 16 that these people would still be somewhat influential, or at the very least at arm's length related to the work that I do today. And so like, it's a good thing I wasn't a dick when I was 16 because, if people hold these ideas, these memories, and if they're positive, they turn into referrals and new work. And if you build that credible name for yourself, regardless of your entrepreneurship background or not, it can carry you so far.
Yeah. And I'm really resonating with the whole concept that you shared of it being this way of like or this understanding that you need to market yourself, because that's something that you and I have talked a lot about. And it's something on a personal level that I think is really important, both in my life and my business, is that from a young age, when you're in this entrepreneurial mindset of a home, you learn that your appearances are very important, and more so than just like the way that you look, but like, especially with us being from this like Italian background of a family, like you didn't leave. I still to this day don't leave the house in anything less than jeans.
Yeah.
Unless I'm going to the gym.
There's decor.
There's decorum. There's a way of upholding yourself. There's a way of acting in public that you always kind of hold yourself to this higher standard, because you never really know what, relationship might spark or you might damage from being of poor showing that day. So I think that's a really, really great way to put it. And, it was interesting because I would venture to say that our time as kids in this entrepreneurial family was a little bit different, because like if we look back really far, you remember back in the days when dad worked 6 days a week instead of 5, right? So family owned mechanic shop. He had no other choice but to keep it open 6 days a week. So that led to a lot of familial sacrifices, but it also led to this kind of understanding that your job doesn't just stop at 5 p.m.
Yeah. It never did.
It never did for our family, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people that have worked in traditional corporate environments, especially right now with the big movement of trying to separate your professional and your personal lives in a manner of like boundaries, right? Like where if you're not being paid, you're not working kind of thing, which I think is a healthy way to look at it in some of the corporate world. But as an entrepreneur, that kind of stuff doesn't exist.
Right. You do lots of stuff for free.
You do lots of stuff for free. You're always on the go because you know that those things you're doing for free are in benefit of you, your family, or in some cases, your clientele, because you care so much about your clientele. And we talked about this in one of our previous episodes where, I wanted to try and find this balance of, doing the things that I found joy in between doing the things that were work. But I wanted to ensure that I was maintaining a level of quality and customer service for the clientele that I have is very, very important to me. Well, you can't shut off at 5 p.m. and maintain the relationships like that.
Definitely.
Right? So that was something that was taught at a really young age to us as well. And I think it was really neat. So do you think that having these kind of influences gave you a leg up in business? Like, do you think you've gone farther because of having that as opposed to trying to learn it all on your own at a certain stage? Or
that's a really interesting question, because I feel if you would have asked me from 20 to 25, if I felt it gave me a leg up, I would have said yes. If you ask me now, I feel like now all of that leg up I thought I had in the first 5 years of my life, now, or the first 5 years of my adult life, now like I'm almost 30, turning 30 next year. There's all of this work, all of this fun I didn't have growing up in like an immigrant family and an entrepreneurial family, that now I'm kind of like dematuring a little bit. I guess you could say like I grew up too fast, and now the latter part of my 20s is like, okay, Deanna, you took yourself so seriously, little business owner, started your business at 24, you didn't have any fun. So like, what's fun, right? And then people, always used to ask me, what are your hobbies? And I didn't believe in hobbies because I always tried to monetize my hobbies. Like singing, I'm trying to monetize that. Doing social media, trying to monetize that. Typing has always been such a huge love of mine. Never thought that I would monetized it because I'm like, I love this. I want to do it. I want to get paid for it, right? So the idea of like a hobby kind of never stuck with me, because it's like, well, if you're doing a hobby so much that you get good at it, like people are gonna want to pay for that because you're getting so good at something that somebody else isn't. It's a skill, right? So I just wish more people would. Hobbies are great, and like you want to have lots of different hobbies, but if you spend time like devoting yourself for like a decade to a hobby, like that is monetizable. You can make money for that, and you should make money for that if you desire to. Like it's not just all play and all work. Like you can have things that give you both joy and also pay your bills, but like it's such a fine line. And there's some days where I look at this thing that like I love doing every day. I don't love it. I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to look at another page, right? But then if I go too long without it, I'm obsessed with it. I want to go back to it. I'm obsessed with it, right? So as much as I feel like being entrepreneurial gave me like a leg up. I have boundary issues. And also like that whole idea about being presentable. Like when you're an entrepreneur, not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Like we come from that hustle culture, like no days off. I heard that so much when I was 18 years old. No days off. That is not sustainable. That is not a good way to live life, especially like as a woman, especially because, you know, I want to have a family and I don't want my whole priority to be work, right? Yeah. So having to like not learn any of those boundaries at like growing up and kind of having to like teach myself them now to be able to say, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I do whatever I need to do for my clients, but I also take the weekends off. And I also like shut my phone on Do Not Disturb after 8 o'clock and I don't look at it. Like having certain boundaries, and your clients will totally respect that. Like what you set yourself up for is what will happen. Like my clients don't text me after 8. They're not going to get a message. So they know that. They just wait till the next day and everybody lives and the world keeps going, you know?
Well, and that's a really good point. That just comes down to setting expectations. And it's so funny. I don't think you've listened to this episode yet, but we talked a lot about the whole idea of monetizing a hobby and something that you find passion in I think episode 19. And yeah, this is episode 20. Yeah, episode 19. But yeah, thank you. We talked a lot about that and how that can be something that there is some pressure behind, but can also be a lot of fulfillment in doing something like that, right? So when you talk about these boundaries, this is something that I had to learn kind of the hard way just a couple of years ago. And you're right, it's about managing expectations with the people and the families that you serve. Because if from the get-go you're like, hey, you know, I'm going to be here, your greatest advocate, I'm going to help you do all these things that you've hired me for, but like also respect that I'm a human being and have a life to live, most of them will allow you to do that. So to kind of ask a question on that here, is that something you've ever struggled with, this kind of boundary that you've had to set between professional and personal? Because it was very real for us growing up as kids.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you know, I certainly resonate with a lot of what you're saying, Deanna, about trying to balance the fact that all of your hobbies you're paid for as well. And how do you set boundaries when you're loving all of the works that you're doing? But I think for me, where I really, really learned those boundaries is through all the teams that I've gotten to lead and manage. And I think that I had the opportunity to experience my own supervisors and managers that weren't as good at setting those boundaries, and as a result made themselves vulnerable to people taking advantage of those things. And so for me, I've learned and realized that sure, like there's some times where I'll be working until 6 or 7 in the evening, but most of the time, you know, I'm either conscious that if I need to be sending emails during that time, I'm not doing it until the next morning, or if I do, there's an understanding of like why it needed to be sent at that time, and a very clear expectation set with my team of like, I don't want that to be the life you're living. And so I'm really, really clear on my boundaries because I know that that makes me a better role model, especially when my team is like newer professionals, certainly like within 5 years out of university. And so it's very, very important role that I have in being able to like instill in them reasonable professional expectations and boundaries that they can take with them throughout their career, regardless of how long they're with me.
I saw this really funny video the other day because we're all millennials here. And it was a millennial as a team member was like, yeah, no problem. I'll work late. I'll get this done. Everything will be fine. And the millennial as a team leader, you better not work tonight. I will go to bat for you and I will make sure nobody abuses your time. And it's, to me, when I saw that, it was so true because the teams that I've led, it's like, I don't care if you don't understand your boundaries. I will force those boundaries down your throat to keep you healthy and effective. Where as millennials and entrepreneurs and hustle culture kind of people, that's a hard one lesson for a lot of us. We're like, we will do what we need to kind of get it done. And you have something to say?
But it's about picking your battles though too. It's not that I don't ever expect that my teams are going to work hard and are going to hustle and are going to put in that 120%. But like if we're going to use, I don't know, use an athletic analogy for the lack of a better one. And you know, if you were to practice at 100% all the time, you're not going to have any energy left for the game, right? And so what's so important is that we understand as a group where our general level of place is, so that we can continue to progress, continue to grow. But when there is that deadline, when I do need something, we've built the trust and the expectation of the environment that we need to hustle. We need to go now. We've got this event where we're going to be working 13, 15 hours a day for this week. And then I'll take care of you on the other side. Like, we'll take a couple of days off. We'll do what we need to do. But it's about understanding those boundaries and the moderation of when the expectation is we need to go, and then being able to work backwards and understand what else is necessary when.
That's so true. What you said about, when we need to work, and then we need to rest, And so I think that's the part that millennials are missing. Because even myself, like, I work on deadlines. And if I have like a little bit of breathing room, like maybe a day, I'm looking for something else to do. Like, that is unnecessary. Like, I got my work done. I'm ahead of schedule. I should let myself sit down, like, take some extra time, maybe work on something that I've been putting off, like give myself some space. But like, that's the part that needs fixing. We all can work hard, especially when you're passionate about something. Like, I've recently discovered passion fatigue. It's like when you're so in love with something that it can like literally just emaciate you because you become hyperfixated with it, which is like very much what happens in my work. So like learning that downtime is okay. That non-productivity or just that slower time is okay. So that when the work comes, when the time you need to hustle, you could do it. Because a lot of times we're just hustling all the time, and then the hustle comes, and it's the biggest moments that we burn out on. Like when all of the work compounds, it's like the most important time.
Yeah.
That's when you flake out because you didn't rest at the slow times, right? So I've just learned if you want to peak performance, like it's about sprints. Like, you're not running a marathon. You're not trying to get to the end. You're literally just trying to like get to the next post, get to the next post, get to the next post, and then see where you end up. And you look back a couple of years and you see all your progress, but it doesn't unfold so linear like that. It's when you're an entrepreneur, they always say like, oh, it's a roller coaster. It is. Like, life is a roller coaster. Working, a 9 to 5 is a roller coaster. It's just you pick your amount of thrill. I have really high peaks in my work, so that means I'm going to have really high, like really low lows. And so I have to learn how to just even all of that and be uncomfortable, like be comfortable in the lows, and then learn not to get too comfy in the highs because they don't stay, right?
Yeah. It's that this too shall pass. This is the video going around social media with all the Tom Hanks and Shia LaBeouf and a bunch of other.
This too. It's great, and we've talked about it before, but it's Tom Hanks and a whole bunch of other people, like Matt was saying, and they're like sharing wisdom between each other. And Tom Hanks is this too shall pass. Things are going well, this too shall pass. Things are going terrible, this too shall pass. Right. So we've been talking a fair amount about teams here, and I guess that kind of leads us to our next question in regards to community. So you shared with us how you would define it. Can you give me a story or an example of how you think that the communities you've had have kind of changed your life for better or worse? Or
want to go ahead first?
No, this one's all you.
Oh,
Those are questions.
So I think that's really important because community is what shapes us as people. Like, for example, we grew up entrepreneurial, but then also like our family's a first generation immigrant. So, I often have differences in the way I think about things compared to some of my peers that families aren't. Or for example, it's the same with like entrepreneurial, or if you have family, that does a lot of like, church stuff, or you have a family that always gets together. And so I think it matters, those big environmental things, because they impact like how you see the world later on, the people that you're like constantly around. So in terms of our family's community, everybody always assumes because we're Italian, we have like a huge family, and we do have a lot of family, but I think our parents were really protective of their circle. Yeah. And just like the energy in their circle. And if it was ever like any bad energy came in, it was like warded off right away. Like no drama allowed.
Well, that's Dad's doing. He is averse to drama.
Yeah, my dad is averse to drama. So I just learned that it's not about me. Like it can't all be about me all the time, right? And so I really look at my life now in that way to have, I guess, some self-awareness. When you grow up in family, especially like we have 3 siblings, like we have to share everything, right? And especially like you're the oldest and I'm in the middle, like we bonded over the fact that our little brother got everything. Right? So all of those little things that happen, all those things that happen throughout your life, like, we used to fight over the front seat or things that like you probably never even thought about. You just like pop in the front seat, right? They impact how we like move about the world. And so if I find that I run into difficulty or like stagnant thinking about something, I really try to retract back and be like, where did that thought come from? Like, was it just like an offhand comment that my mom made sometime, just like stuck in my head? Or is this something that I actually believe?
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's really good to be in a sense of community. Our community has these values. We really believe in family. We really believe in getting together and showing appreciation and love to each other. We really believe in working hard and being generous with our resources once we've received them. But there's also things about our community that probably I shouldn't think that way, like the hustle culture thing, or that you give way more than you get in return. Like you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't overgive. You shouldn't overget. Like you should, just because somebody's family doesn't mean they can walk all over you. Like there's these boundaries that as an adult I've been learning in hindsight of my experience. So I don't feel negative or positive about my experience anymore, because I think we all just have good and bad parts of the way that we grew up. But I think it's really important as adults to understand like that the way you think, it's not always you. It's sometimes the things that people have said to you or the experiences you've had or the community you've grown up. So I think it's really important to reflect on the big decisions you make in your life and who am I making this decision for? Am I really making this decision for me and what I want? Or is this just like an intrinsic value that was placed on me that I've never thought twice about, right? Especially in our family, like I'm the only girl, I'm the middle child. Like it was really important I be a good girl, like do things right, don't ruffle feathers, Oh my God, can you imagine if we brought the cops to our house growing up? Like, no, like we were good kids. And I always tell my mom that, like, you had good kids. We didn't cause any problems. I didn't do anything bad my entire life. But also, like, I don't take risks. I don't take chances. I'm really like an anxious person sometimes. I have to like see the exit strategy and everything. And so kind of like that carefreeness that I wish I had. I wish our community had more of that. So I hope that like with our generations, we can let the next communities be a little bit more carefree, responsible, good people, just a little bit more carefree would be good.
So it's interesting that you finalize that entire topic with the idea of what your hope is for the next generation. So one of my final questions for you is, you stated you want to have a family, you want to have kids. What would be the values, the entrepreneurial lessons, the familial and community lessons that you feel would be really, really important to instill into your kids, that are non-negotiables for you?
I really want my kids not to have like their worthiness be deemed by dollars. I really want my kids to live in a world where they understand money. They understand it's not unlimited. They're not entitled, but they also get that money is not limited, right? Like, oh, we're not always just struggling. We're not always like so overcome by bills. We're not, 1 month we're having good because the business did good, but then the next month it's bad because we didn't, there's no consistency there. I want my kids to have consistency in money so that they understand that it truly is abundant. There always is enough. There always is enough to get by. We're always good as long as we're together, right? So I think our family tried to teach us that things with their words, but then the actions, and you could see a little bit of like the emotions from your parents. They just weren't good at hiding the fact that things were going bad. My family's like, my parents are very transparent. Like if something's bothering them, you could feel them. And I just don't ever want my kids to feel money stress like that. They're going to have enough of that in their adult life. I don't want them to feel that, before a certain age. Cause I just remember being so predisposed with, oh, well, I got to make money when I'm older. I have to make money when I'm older. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you get money when you're older and it doesn't fix everything. Right. So I really want that for my kids. And then I also want, I think, more adventure. We have to understand, like, our parents came here from not really, well, our dad came here when he was a little younger, so not so much for him, but our mom, she came here when she was 19 more permanently. And so she has all this understanding from when she's back in her native land. And she comes here and everything's really different and multicultural. And so we grew up in that world. Like I can live in a world with lots of different people, lots of different beliefs, but even still sometimes with them, it's a little sticky. There's some things that are like a little sticky, even though they've lived in Canada for 40 years or however long it's been. So I hope that like another generation, some of those things that kind of are unmentionables in our more like traditional household will be easy for our kids to share with us.
Sure.
Yeah, not even because like I'm worried about repercussion from my family. It's just there's some things you do and don't talk about in more traditional families, right? So I'd like for that to be a little bit more amended. But
yeah, like there was a certain level of understanding or expectation that no matter what the struggles you were going through were, like you could share to a degree with your family, but you weren't. I don't want to say like what's coming to mind is like you wouldn't show weakness, but that's not really the best way to put it. It was like, we are here for you to help you process whatever, but at the end, the way that you overcome this challenge is purely your responsibility.
Yeah, literally.
Right.
They never sent out the life raft. They'd wait for sure and be like, "You'll be fine," but
believe in you.
but the life raft just sometimes that would have been nice. That would have been good. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? What would you say is this, very important thing you would want to instill in the next generation if that happens for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that something that I'm hearing a lot from the two of you and in your experience growing up is there's just so many gifts that your parents were able to give you. And then you get to a certain age where you start to realize that the gifts sometimes come at a cost, right? And there's different sorts of legacies that these gifts carry that we don't really understand while we're learning the primary lesson. There's all these like extra things that exist. And for me, something that, I had to contend with a lot growing up, and I'm still kind of reconciling and processing a lot of that is, when my parents got divorced when I was a toddler. So this was always something that I grew up with in a household where I didn't have both my parents in the same place, is that you realize pretty quick because you don't have my parents got along and they had a great relationship, and I'm very thankful for them having such a good relationship. But you understand that your parents on some level aren't on the same page, right? Like something happened there, they're not together. And so that kind of like kickstarted this thing for me of recognizing that, well, if my parents aren't this unified front, that they're not omnipotent. And like all kids, I think, have to some degree think of their parents as like these omnipotent figures, right? And I think that not enough people stop to think like, oh, my parents have flaws and biases and like these sorts of things. And what my hope is for the next generation is that everybody has the ability and the space and the environment to love and respect and cherish their parents and their family members and whatever grown-ups and elders are in their life, and recognize that their parents are imperfect and that their families are human, and that everyone carries these biases, and that they don't need to necessarily play a role in your life, but recognizing that I am influenced by the biases that my mom holds, that my dad holds, that my grandparents hold, and that those somehow are going to trickle down in the same way that you talk about kind of the influence of your parents and your experience. Like those things affect us, but you talked a lot about reflection. We need to reflect on those places in which we have been impacted and influenced, and our own biases have formed either like because of or in spite of the things that have been cultivated by us when we were kids. And so that would be my hope. Because I think that's something that not enough people stop to think about. I get frustrated with my cousins all the time, and they just like, especially, one of my cousins when he was like 13 or 14 years old, used to start spewing stuff about politics. And I sit him down like, what do you know about that? Oh, no. You just repeated what you just said before. What do you actually know about that? Well, my dad says, like, did you ever stop to think that you could do your own research and you could learn about this stuff? And it's so interesting to watch that point where people think that their parents are the ultimate holders of knowledge. And not that I'm suggesting, in case we have any like kids, youth, teens, young adults, whatever, watching it, not like down with the parents, like that's not what I'm here for, but like understand that while your parents have your best interest at heart, that they also are biased and they are human.
I heard this thing, it like made me cry. It was like, be nice to your parents because they're living their life for the first time too.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that. And that was a huge like glass shattering effect to me when I realized that my parents are just human.
They're just regular people.
Like, I remember when I opened my business, I think there was a certain point because my parents have always been like, they know business. So if I ever need anything, go to business. And then I remember like the first year, because I own a digital business, which my parents have like no concept of how to run anything digital, right? And I was like, my parents don't know about this business. Like, I'm completely on my own. And I'm like, am I outgrowing my parents? And I think like that's the goal, to like outgrow your parents. Yeah. Like, they want you to do that.
Yeah.
And that was the thing when you were saying about, you know, that your parents aren't, you know, something, there was a mismatch there, non-alignment. I think it's funny for us because our family, we could tell that our parents are not on the same wavelength. Like, so like we're rarely, but they're always together, right? Yeah. So then we have these things where it's like, I love so wholeheartedly, like my loyalty and my commitment is like so endearing, even if people treat me bad. And like, that's a good lesson too. Whereas you, where it's like, no, you've seen people say, I choose me instead of this relationship, right? Even if it's hard, even if it's scary, even if it's like constant work, right? Where I don't think that there's anything that would cause our parents to get divorced. Like, it's just, that's the same traditional mindset, right? Sure. So good things about that, totally. Bad things about that, totally. Both sides, right? Yeah. So I think it just like, it is what it is. You are who you are. You grew up where you grew up. You can't change it. All you can say is like, who am I going to be today? And then just try to move like the most authenticity in life for what you really believe, not what somebody made you believe.
Mm-hmm. So there's one question
I haven't answered yet. That's okay, but I really want to answer it. The thing that I would impart on my children more than anything else is that independence does not mean you are alone.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Right? Like, I think for us, especially very independent people, and there was so many times where the challenges and the struggles that I was going through, I faced entirely by myself. Not because I didn't believe that anybody would be there for me, but because I didn't feel like that burden should fall upon anybody else.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't want anybody to work as hard as I have to.
Exactly. And that goes in personal matters. It goes in social matters. It goes in business matters. You feel like, hey, this is a struggle that is mine alone. And that is so not true. Mm-hmm. And you and I have had many conversations in the past about this idea of, you know, this self-awareness and this emotional revival that we've each independently gone through in our adult lives. And that was one of the biggest takeaways for me, is that they're just because you know and you think you can handle this on your own doesn't mean you have to, right? Like, I would want to encourage my kids to be strong and independent and be the shoulder for others when they needed it to be, but not to be afraid to ask for help, not to be afraid to seek out mentorship, not to be afraid to show vulnerability when it was necessary to further the community that was around them, right? And so
of course,
that would be important. Okay, what is the final question?
So the final question that we have for you is our first solo guest, because, you know, of course, our last episode with guests was a whole gaggle and guests. Guest gaggle.
I know I listened to that. I was like, you better not ask me to transcribe that.
Guest gaggle. But as you are kicking off our new series of solo guests, we want to know, what is one piece of advice that you would give to everybody listening or watching or sharing this for how they can make their communities a better place?
I think it's really simple. Like, I know that's a big question, but I think it's really simple. Like, it's how you move about the world. Like, are you going to move around the world with your headphones in, pretending that you don't see anybody and nobody else matters? Or are you going to move about the world being aware of what's happening around you? And like, if you see, you know, a lady struggling to get her groceries in her car, like, you help her. Or that's one thing we learned from our mom. Even I was out with my mom yesterday, and there was this lady that she looked like she was having a hard time getting out of her car. And my mom like just grabbed her and helped her out of her car. And I was just like, it's little things like that. Like, there's no benefit to anybody. It's just like, see a need, fill a need, right? You see somebody struggling, if you can do something about it without like giving away all of your, if somebody needs $1 million, don't give them $1 million. I'm not saying that, but like, you can do little things. You can stop your day and do little things to help people. But the only way you see those things are if you're present. If you're like out here worrying about, the stock market, or like worrying about this, or predisposed with what somebody said to you at school, like you are going to miss all of those little opportunities to help other people. And if we're not helping other people, like we're living a sad life, a sad, lonely life. Like the only way that humans feel fulfillment, for most humans anyways, is to give back in a way that's meaningful for them. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you give back, like you're getting something. I know a lot of people, I used to work at like a blood clinic and worked a lot with like the donors there. And I was really just interested in, why do people donate blood? Because obviously like it's not fun. Nobody likes getting a giant needle you can see through in your arm. Why do people donate blood? It's not purely out of their goodness. Like, yes, good people, absolutely. But you get something for giving to others. You get something inside of you, and that can grow. And you will, like, if you just keep compounding, the things that will happen in your life are just incredible. Like, it will return to you tenfold. So I would really just say is like, be kind to others and know that you are getting something back in that. Even if you think that it's completely selfless, you will get something back from that, not even directly from that, but in other ways. So just be kind to other people.
Be kind, be present,
be kind in your life.
Fill a need.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
That's really good. Well, Deanna, thank you for being our second guest, our first solo guest on the show in episode number 20. I think we picked a good number to have you out here. Super happy that you were here. As per tradition, we finish off our episodes by sharing some gratitude with others. So my gratitude for you today, and specifically Deanna, is thank you for being my sister. And through all of the things that we've gone through in our lives together, all of the stories that we misremember together.
We always do. We never see them the same way.
No, and maybe one day we'll be encouraged to tell the cookie story I told at your wedding. But it has been an honor to watch you grow into this businesswoman, grow into this wife, grow into this adult that you have always been capable of being. And I absolutely adore who you have become. And I'm so thrilled for you to see the success that you've gained. And I can't wait to see you continue to grow and push past all the adversities that you have. So I'm grateful to have you on the show, and I'm grateful to have you in my life.
Thank you. That's so nice. I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for you, big bro. I'm grateful for you sticking up for me on the playground, Still, that's the thing, is I love that about siblings, is that dynamic never changes. You are always going to be my 13-year-old brother who stood up to me on my bully on the four square land, Even as adults, you're always going to be that. And when I have kids, you'll still always be that, It's just, as we grow, the dynamic never changes, but we change as people, right? And so I love that, like, our relationship can get stronger, but it's still founded on the, hey, big bro, Yeah, so I would say that, first of all, obviously, I'm very grateful for you, and that I love the fact that you want to do something and you just do it. Like, there's very few things that you've been like, oh, I'm too scared to do that. Or like, I'm very much the worrier. You're the forager, and I'm like, but wait, what about this? Right. So I'm really grateful that I can learn how to be more like that through you. And then maybe we could become one very well-rounded person altogether.
It's the dream. I'm grateful for both of you for sharing your experience with me and with everybody. I think that it makes me realize, I'm very, very thankful for everything in my life, but it makes me realize how much I missed out on by having siblings, just to see the dynamic that you two share. And I'm really, really grateful that you two are able to both be such incredibly talented, skilled people independently, but not have to do it alone, and have that capacity as siblings to be able to lean in, trust, learn from each other, grow from each other, admire each other is something that I love getting to see secondhand and then hear all the time about through Carlo.
Well, there's some stuff you would have missed out on, so don't worry. It's not always fun with siblings, but you just make it work, right?
Well, at this point, I think we're going to bring episode number 20 to a conclusion. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Deanna, for being here on the show with us. This has been an amazing episode. I feel really good about it. It was a good time.
Fuzzy
stuff. Thank you guys again. I'm Carlo. This is Matt. This is the wonderful Deanna. Join us on all of our social media platforms. Check out our Discord server for some behind the scenes and some links to all of Deanna's stuff. I'm sure that you'll fall in love with her social media and her ASMR clickety clock. For those of you that like ASMR, it's all on there.
I was going to say, Deanna, do you want to shout out your socials really quick so one can just jump on there directly and I'll have to go through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Aurora Transcription. So it's AERORA Transcription. You'll get ASMR. You'll get, if you're interested in learning about legal transcription, I talk about that. And I also make some terrible jokes. So if you want to check it out for that income. But
in true Corrado fashion. Amazing. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Take care.